Good evening, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California, this is Spiritual Fitness with your host, Vaish, a veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and former monk, and myself, JM. Spiritual Fitness is a program dedicated to exploring the timeless texts and practices of Bhakti Yoga for people who want wisdom in their daily life. We have close to 50 members on Zoom and more than 50 on Facebook. Good evening, good afternoon, Vaish. Please welcome to the show.
Hey, JM, good to see you. And whatever time of day it is, it doesn't really matter because people check in from all parts of the planet. So it's different times. Yeah, thank you very much for that kind introduction and good to see you all. Thanks for coming back. We're going into some really exciting territory from the ancient teachings of Patanjali, from the Yoga Sutras, in which he gives us a way to develop powerful introspection, one of the most useful tools for any human being. After all, you only get one mind, and how you tend to it makes all the difference in the world of how we get along in life, because we don't see the world the way it is. We see the world the way we are, and the way we are depends on the condition of our mind. This is one of the premises of the yoga teachings. And fortunately for us, we can amend the mind. We can amend the mind's algorithms. We can reform its quality and nature through lifestyle, and also special practices like mantra and even diet, which is under the category of lifestyle, but it's so specific and so easily amended that it bears a separate category, getting in a separate category. So welcome everybody, and feel free during this session to unmute and participate at any time. And also, there's no harm in coming on screen. We are completely nonviolent. I've been a vegetarian since I was a kid, so don't be afraid of me. And feel free. It's really a participatory kind of program. So you can show yourselves even if you happen to be in pajamas or anything like that. We don't mind. So I first offer my respects to my teacher and to all of you. Namaste. Thank you very much. And let us start off with a little bit of practice of introspection by taking the time to slow down for a minute and look inside. So if you would, please close your eyes and sit up a little bit straighter than you were a second ago. And then bring your attention to your breath and stay alert, but be relaxed. And just appreciate the nourishing power of your breath and the fact that it goes on even when you're not aware of it. But when you do become aware of it, it gives you a way to moderate the life airs within your body, to make your mind more focused and concentrated. So for now, sit alertly, but be relaxed and breathe. And be conscious that your breath is a gift. Something you can't do without, so you might want to thank your breathing function for taking care of you for so many years. And notice the breath going outwardly and inwardly, and let any other kinds of concerns, waves of thoughts coming through your mind, just fade into the distance and be there with your breath. And now, keeping a nice, steady, even breath cycle, bring your awareness to your heart region. the region of emotion, gratitude, and the seat of your consciousness. You are consciousness. You are not your body, but you are the seer or the conscious self within a very sophisticated biomechanical machine called the body that has a physical, gross and subtle element that runs itself by the power of nature, just like everything else in nature runs itself. We don't run it. We don't run our digestion, nor do we consciously moderate how our cells are going through their life processes, nor do we consciously moderate homeostasis and maintain an even temperature. We simply reside within the body. So for now, be aware of the fact that you're residing within this magnificent machine. Now, please bring your awareness for a moment to your digestion and notice that it goes on without you. That is, you don't even have to push a button. The setting is automatic. In the digestive process, everything you eat is being broken down without your knowledge and distributed to the appropriate parts of your body. Glucose goes to the brain, various proteins as building blocks in other parts of your body, minerals, vitamins, all perfectly organized. You're the seer, you're not the digester. Now please bring your awareness to your power of hearing. The power of hearing sound informs us, and according to the Vedas, ancient books of knowledge, vrtti shabdat. Shabdat means sound, and vritti means you can uncover yourself and free yourself from all troubles in life by hearing the appropriate sound vibration. That's called mantra, or sound that delivers you. But notice how effortless it is to hear sounds. If you can't hear, you feel helpless. But you have that power. And now bring your awareness to your all-powerful tongue. The tongue practically rules the body and demands to speak or to taste something. And the ancient yoga wisdom scriptures say, Ata Shri Krishna Namadi na bhaved grayamindriye sevamukhi jivado swayameva spratida. All yoga begins with the tongue. If you can, make friends with your tongue and regulate it. Not eating too much, not eating too little, not speaking whimsically, but using your speech as your bond and to liberate you through higher sounds, then you're on your way in yoga. And keep breathing at a nice, even pace, even as you explore the various assets, the gifts you've been given in this biomechanical, amazing machine, the body, that you use 24 hours a day, but perhaps are not sometimes fully aware of. And now see if you can become aware of the vrittis. A vritti is a turning or a wave of energy within your chitta. The chitta means the mind, that software within this machine. through which we take in impulses and we process them. You, the seer, can witness these movements within your own mind. And breathe. And notice any movements going on within your mind. Those aren't you. Those are energies moving past you. You're the witness. In fact, everything from the outside world gets recorded into that very subtle space known as the chitta, or your mind. And you're the one observing it there, as if watching a movie screen. But it's not you. You are aloof. And now, situated in your real position as the seer of your life situation, separate from it, as the seer of your body and mind, but as a separate entity from the body and mind, let us together, behind muted mics, utter the seed mantra, Om, which synchronizes all the spiritual energies there within the region of the heart where you reside. I'll say the mantra 3 times with nice, steady, even breaths. And you can follow along as you wish. And inhale. And inhale. And we'll say the mantra one more time, but this time, let your mind, your awareness be lifted by the vibration of the mantra. Inhale. Now bring your awareness back to your breath. And feel the relief you may have gotten from taking a vacation from riding on the vrittis, or the churnings of the mind, thinking that you have to do something about them. And then deliberately come back into your external environment. You can rub your hands together to get some friction, become aware of your gross physical body. Open your eyes. Come back into the present environment, such that it is. And welcome back. So this is a kind of practice recommended to notice the difference between the body and the self. And having that little space is a relief, don't you think? Even if it's for a moment or two, does it give you a sense of unburdening for a moment? I got a thumbs up from JM. And Staira, I can't pronounce your name. Ensign. It's hard pronouncing Zoom names sometimes, so sorry, forgive me. But I'm seeing some thumbs up. I'm glad that a few of you were able to feel that and respond. And now let's talk a little bit about yoga psychology. It's so meticulously analyzed by Patanjali and also in other yoga wisdom texts. When you read it and when you see the presentation today, you'll be able to develop a more profound sense of introspection through analysis. And what we're trying to do here through this analysis is also develop what's called vivek. Vivek means a sense of discrimination. Just like, have you ever become angry and then you said something or wrote a letter, and then right after you pushed the button or right after you uttered it, then you wished you hadn't done it? And you might have been spared that anguish and regret by having developed vivek or discrimination. And the way that would work would be that you've already prepared your mind and yourself, and you see the difference. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about this in the 3rd chapter. Given the Sanskrit, Indriyani priyanyahur indriyabhya param manaha manasastu para bhudir yo bhudhe paratastu saha. This is naming the different parts of our chitta, or our subtle, subconscious, software-like body. And he says, lowest of all on the physical body are the senses. And above the senses is the mind, called the manas. It's like the clearinghouse where all the impressions from the world, from our senses, are stored. And then above the mind is the buddhi, or the intelligence. And the intellect is where we develop vivek. If the intellect becomes weak, and then it just gives into the mind's whimsy, and we can be driven adrift. And we don't have much say over what happens to us. And that continues the cycle of karma, which I'll talk about in just a minute here. Therefore, it's recommended, evam buddhi param buddhva samstabhyatmanam. Then strengthen your intelligence and your sense of discrimination. When you become highly discriminating, which means that your consciousness becomes trenchant. You're looking beyond just the immediate activity, and you're seeing what is the consequence to this. Animals don't have that so much. Some of them have more than others, but oftentimes they're not planning into the future. That is, they don't see what's the cause behind something, or how I'm the cause of what's going to happen to me later. But those who are highly discriminating and have developed the vivek are more deliberate in how they interact with the world. It leads to enlightened engagement with the world. Let me just see if there are any reflections. By the way, you can write in the chat box. You can also speak up from behind a closed screen, or you can come on screen and speak to us and reflect. And reflections are anything that piqued your interest, anything that caught your attention that you said, okay, that works. For me, I'd like to try that, or any questions you might have, you can ask at any time. Let's ask JM.
I have one for you.
Oh, thank you very much. Please go ahead.
You speak to me on the level of the present, being present, and maintain that presence. I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old and a wife and family and a whole Intel, working at home, all these things that we all are experiencing. Struggling. I had a very consistent meditative practice. Now things have gotten cluttered. The hour-and-a-half meditations aren't as feasible. If the mantras, the Om, oh yes, the aligning, the ability to pull back, and to resubmerge ourselves. But if there's something from your experience to do that, it used to take 4 days of Vipassana to get to. If you understand my meaning, getting to that clearinghouse of the mind and the focus of the present. I'm all ears. I'm all ears. Share. Anyone, anyone.
Sure. Thanks a lot for your feedback and question. Really, one point is to keep in mind that nothing ever stays the same. Even with our spiritual practice, there are ways in which we may be thrown off course due to circumstances in our life. And these needn't be detrimental. They may become the pillars of success. A saying my teacher gave me and repeated often is, failure can become the pillar to success. And he would give the example of learning to walk as a child. When you're getting up and then tumbling back down again, you're developing a sense of balance and so forth. And the other point is that's very encouraging. This is mentioned in the Yoga Sutras and also in the Bhagavad Gita and elsewhere, that even a molecule's worth of practice of introspection, meditation, or selfless service, as we'll talk about, is so beneficial that even if there's a river of distractions going on in your mind, that one little molecule will have significant benefit. So oftentimes we fail to do anything because we can't do everything we want. So it's sometimes helpful to do what you can do with what you have now, and don't be worried about how different your practice may be now than it was before because of the circumstances. And
I appreciate that.
Sure.
It reminds me of changing course direction in the present. The future becomes massively different, and the slight small corrections we do now, whether we think they're small now, can be much bigger given time and patience.
Nice point. And that brings to mind an analogy we talked about in previous sessions about planting seeds. Every time that we express our intentionality and become consciously aware and go to that present state of being the seer rather than being absorbed in what we're seeing, that plants a seed that will grow into something significant. That's why even a tiny little bit of practice has an effect, just as a tiny little seed has an effect if you water it over time. Nice. Anyone else with a reflection or a question? Okay. If you do, just come in at any time in the chat box, or just feel free to jump in at any time. I'm going to show a few slides because I want to give you an idea. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Was that somebody? Obviously it was somebody, but I'm just not sure if they meant to come on or not. Okay, so here are a few slides that will give you an idea of the way Patanjali organizes yoga psychology. And in this succession, we get an interesting look at our inner mind. There are Zoom panels and, oh, this is startling. Your mind records everything. Well, I don't know if you've ever heard a recording of yourself or seen yourself after you've spoken. But sometimes it can be revealing. I remember my mother used to hate herself, the recording of her voice. If I'd play it back, say, stop, I don't want to hear it. Because and I think I inherited that from her also, that sense. But actually, the way the senses work, our eyes are like little cameras, our ears are recorders, and everything's being recorded inside. There's no limit to the space inside. It's a very subtle environment, and that chitta or mind stuff absorbs everything, and not just from this lifetime, from previous lifetimes as well. When the recording goes in, we get what's called a samskara, or an impression. So look at it this way, and this is the way Patanjali is presenting it. Of course, I've updated it in this imagery, and that he says we're not actually seeing the world directly at any time. We're seeing the world as it's imprinted on our chitta, or our mind. So how does this relate to this picture? It's fairly obvious. Oftentimes, we're looking at the screen somewhere, and we're seeing how the world is. In fact, we're looking at each other right now through a screen, which is appropriate to this example. And that is that the mind is taking in the imagery, recording it on the chitta, and we as the seer, and we already experienced ourselves as the seer in the beginning meditation session, we're watching that recording. We're not actually watching the world directly. Think about it. Eyes are cameras, recorders are here, all of the senses are taking in the information. How am I getting it? It's relayed through the mind. And of course, as we've spoken about in many previous sessions, if the mind has a particular conditioning, then that's how we see it also. That's why people have different opinions about the same item that they're viewing in the world, because it's reflected in their mind, and their mind's surfaces the mind's surfaces vary. Let's see the next slide. So a samskara. After the last session, when I mentioned this Sanskrit word samskar, somebody wrote me, Radha Venkat, and he said samskar, S-O-M-E, and then S-C-A-R, samskar. It leaves a scar, in other words. And the author of whose book I often study about the Yoga Sutras gave this brilliant sentence about samskar, or the impression that's left in the mind is as a vibrant, latent impulse that activates under conducive circumstances. So it's all recorded in there. And as an example, let's say in a previous life, I had an affinity or a special connection with somebody who looked a particular way. And black hair, very skinny, whatever. And then in the next life, when I see somebody like that, it activates that samskara, and oh, that's who I'm attracted to. That's what I like. Or particular types of food, culture, all of these in myriad combinations and permutations in the form of groves of samskaras within our chitta are what predetermine how we see the world and what kind of choices we make. And the force of those is what's called karma. We're forced to work in a certain way because of the way we see the world. We react in a certain way because of the condition of our mind. So karma means we're not free, we're being forced to work in a certain way. But yoga means to become freed from that conditioning and to rise above the automatic impulses that come to us and be able to freely see the world the way it is. Let's go a little further into the psychology. So now I'm going to present what are called the 5 detrimental vrittis. So again, remember, and I'm using these Sanskrit terminologies because many of you are coming regular to these classes and the terms will stick. So vritti in Sanskrit from the root word vrit really means to turn. So the turnings, I like to say, or churnings of the mind are called vrittis. And as I said previously, they come through the various sense engagements we have with the world. And there are 5 categories, says Patanjali, of vrittis, under which all other states of consciousness within the mind are subsumed. So by understanding these 5 categories, and being able to examine your own chitta, mind, you will develop a deeper power of discrimination or vivek. You'll be able to introspect in a very meaningful way. So the first one is called right knowledge. In Sanskrit, that's called pramanam. It goes to epistemology. How do you know anything? And what is the process for knowing? So the first vritti is what we take in an accurate way in our mind. And Patanjali then lists these 3 ways that we understand any object or situation in the world. The first is through sense perception. Again, we're seeing a reflection. So if I'm looking at a pot with water in it, and I see the moon, I'm seeing the moon in that pot, and I observe it. There it is, the image of the pot. The next is logic. And through logic, I see the world and assume that it's a certain way. And the example often given is if you see, and this is for those who live in the Bay Area, maybe it's too close to home to use this ancient analogy, but if you see smoke, then logically you'll infer that there's fire somewhere. It's not foolproof, but it's one of the ways in which we take in right knowledge from the world. And the third is through verbal testimony. If you hear from a trustworthy person, for instance, if anybody here knows somebody in Chicago, anyone? And we call them right now and say, what's the weather like? And they say, oh, it's 82 degrees and a little bit steamy, and there's a few clouds in the sky. Then we'll have some right knowledge about what's going on somewhere through hearing from a worthy person. So this is a vritti. We're taking in imagery from the outside world through these 3 processes, and it affects our mind in a certain way. The second of the category of 5 vrittis is error, an erroneous way of getting knowledge. And through this, we actually obtain all the sufferings that we go through in the mind. This is called viparyaya, which means I'm getting inaccurate information within the mind. And one of the examples Patanjali gives is considering an object to have an attribute it doesn't have. And this is a classic example of mistaking a rope for a snake. You step on it, and from the corner of your eye, you think snake, and you jump. Oh, it's a snake. And then I look, it's not a snake, it's a rope. It's harmless. So there's a way in which Patanjali speaks about, and I'll go into a little more detail about this particular vritti, or impression on the mind, in just a minute to give some more detail about it. The next is called imagination. Usage of words, he says, that are devoid of an actual object. For instance, if you say time flies, then what you're doing is putting 2 words together to create a particular meaning, but together there is no real sense of time flying. If you look at a cartoon, you'll see an alarm clock flying around, but it's a conjuring through using language. And this is also a vritti, an impression upon the mind. Next is sleep. And this sleep means that we're actually not in proximity to any content. And that is deep sleep. There's 3 different levels of sleep that are described, and that is very deep sleep, where you're not unconscious, but you're unconscious of nothing. Or that should actually be, that's a typo. It's not unconscious, but you're conscious of nothing. Fixing it on the fly. Thank you very much, Jaya. So sleep is not being unconscious, but being conscious of nothing. And then there are other stages of sleep where you're much more aware of particular churnings in the mind. If that's me, I'm turning something off here. Sorry. Okay. So 5 detrimental vrittis, and we come to memory. So memory means the retention of images or sense objects that have been experienced. So in the past, I've experienced something and I retrieve it. And there's two aspects. One is I retrieve something that's real, or I retrieve something that's imagined. For instance, in a dream, I may have seen gold and I may have seen a mountain, and now I create a golden mountain in my dream. I put the two together, and this is called memory. And this is one of the vrittis, the churnings that go on within the mind space. And then we come to the second vritti, and I mentioned this point of invalid experience and as the main cause of suffering. And here are its different components and how it's caused. And this causes what's called klesha. Klesha means misery in the mind. Has anybody, let's stop the slides just for a second. I'd like to get a confirmation if there's anybody here who's ever felt any kind of suffering for any reason. 1, 2, 3. Only got 3 volunteers so far. 4. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. According to Patanjali, all that suffering is taking place in your mind. Wouldn't you like to know that there's an ultimate cause of all suffering? Because if we could know there's a cause of it, then we could possibly look at the cure. Don't you hate it when you've developed some symptom in your body and then you go to all kinds of doctors and they say, we have no idea what's causing this? Is it just me, or does it drive you crazy also? I mean, that's a kind of limbo. Like, can't somebody figure out what's wrong with me? As soon as you can be diagnosed, then at least they can tell you, hey, there's no cure for this, or, we'll do our best, or here, I definitely have a cure. It's usually like 1/3 of each of those possibilities. So Patanjali is saying, yes, here are the causes, and there is a cure, 100% cure, if you take the medicine properly. How does that make you all feel? In a word. What?
Good, very good.
Good.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Good is good. All right.
There is one comment from Facebook.
Yes.
Janet says, suffering seems like my middle name.
If it wasn't for bad luck, I couldn't get any luck at all. Yeah, I can't get no respect. Suffering's my middle name. I like that. Okay, what else?
Porter has a question. He has raised hand. Porter, you can come and maybe ask a question if you have.
Yes.
Or was that an accident? If that's so.
No, I think I raised my hand as like, yes, I agree.
Good. Yeah,
but the suffering. Perhaps we can take some solace in that our karmic debt is being erased, and perhaps our souls before this incarnation signed up for more than we thought. So.
Did I sign up for this? Okay, I like the way you put things, Porter. Thank you very much. Okay, let's go on, because I tend to chew up the clock a lot, and I really appreciate your feedback. Thank you, everybody. Let's see a couple more points here. Now we're right on it, because here Patanjali then says, here's where the suffering comes from, the kleshas. Klesha means the suffering caused by our mind, and all suffering comes from the mind. So the first aspect out of the 5 aspects of suffering in the mind is ignorance. It's called avidya. Vidya means knowledge, and avidya means no knowledge. I mean, I'm not seeing things properly. So here are the different psychological points to ignorance. One is that I accept the impermanent to be permanent. So the world's impermanent. Of whatever lodging you're in now, whatever clothes you have, whatever car you have, whatever body you're in, you don't get to keep it. I hate to be the bearer of maybe unsavory news, but in the end, it's actually good news, because once we know what's what and we don't accept the impermanent to be permanent, it's actually a huge relief. It's like holding on to it that makes the trouble, and I'll get to that one in the last part. The second is to accept that which is impure to be pure. So the body is perpetually impure. It's, if you'll forgive me, spewing all kinds of impurities all the time, but I try to make it the most pure thing. It just has a thin covering. The next is to accept pain to be happiness. So there's this cycle that anyone can get into of the senses, and thinking that by lavishing the senses with their desired objects, then they'll become happy. But is it really true? The Yoga Wisdom, for instance, in Bhagavad Gita says, Yehi sam sparshaja bhoga. So sparshaja means anything you touch with your senses to try to get some pleasure out of it becomes later on a source of misery. Isn't that an interesting concept? It's quite different from a lot of the billboards I see, which, for instance, Coca-Cola for years had an advertisement that showed a bottle pouring out Coca-Cola, which after all, and I hate to break this to anybody who likes Coca-Cola, it's just sugar water with some caffeine and a proprietary recipe. And it says, pour out a bottle of happiness. So there's this misjudgment that actually touching the senses of their objects as much as possible brings me happiness. And promoting that idea is avidya, and subscribing to it is avidya, or ignorance. Often it gets me into a cycle of addiction where I'm taking something and then it plateaus, so I take some more. And that can happen in any kind of sense gravitatory cycle. I try to take more and more and more. And eventually I'm not getting anything out of it except bondage. And finally, ignorance is characterized by accepting the non-self to be the self. So as we examined in our early on meditation together, you are the seer. You're not that which is seen. You're not the body. You're not the mind. You're not your life situation. You're something that's non-neural, non-temporal, non-chemical. You are categorically different from your body, your mind, from the blood in your body, from the bones, from all the organs. Those aren't you. They're the biomechanical apparatus that you reside within right now. So ignorance means to accept all these things as true, but actually they're not. So then Patanjali moves on to ego, and he says that it's accepting the power of seeing with the seer. That's a little subtle, but let's examine it. And we did in our meditation, didn't we? We said, okay, you're the one seeing, but what you're seeing is different from you. But if you accept it to be the same, I am my mind, I am my body, this is called ahankara, or false ego, a false conception of myself. The third is called raga, or attraction. So Patanjali says attraction comes from our previous experiences. And I explained this earlier. I've had encounters with objects in the world that brought me a sense of happiness. And then when I see them again, it triggers that latent samskara, and then I'm attracted to it. I like that. And on the reverse side, the dvesha, or aversion, I may have been pained by something in the past, and its very image in this world predisposes me to that object is abhorrent to me now. And so this raga and dvesha are constantly going on based on my previous experiences. And as I'm having new experiences in rejecting or accepting them, that's creating more raga and dvesha. And this is a perpetual process through which I'm having a reaction, and then there's a reaction. Stay with me here. And then there's a reaction. And in perpetuity, you can see how karma becomes unlimited, because there are unlimited ways in which that the echo echoes on itself and echoes again, echo chambers. And we hear this sometimes on Skype if somebody has their phone on at the same time. And the reaction bounces back and forth until it comes in an infinite loop. And finally, my favorite, abhinibhesha, which it sounds really funny, clinging to life. Of course, we should try to preserve our time within this body, but Patanjali says, because we've had other bodies in previous lives and we've lost them, death is it's the most dramatic thing you can do. Is die. I mean, everything else pales in comparison. Ernest Becker wrote about how everything we do in life practically is a distraction for us from thinking about how I have to leave the body at some point. So binibheshita means I have such an aversion to leaving the body. I do everything I can in this life in order to avoid thinking about it or dealing with it in any way. And this is called clinging to life, or binibheshita. So there you have the list of what's called invalid experience within the mind, or vrittis. These are churnings in the mind that all are divided into these 5 categories. And it's these 5 experiences based on these particular ways in which the mind moves that we suffer, and we suffer in our mind. Okay, so we'll just see if there's any, we'll come back into the Zoom pictures and see if there's anything that you want to comment on. What struck you about that? Did you?
I'll start, try to break the ground real quick if you'd like.
Yeah, sure.
You're not your body. You're not your mind. You're not your emotions. And you can prove this. You can say, I'm not my mind. I put my mind to work to solve a problem, an engineering feat, or whatever. You put your mind to work for a calculation as your computer. You're not your emotions. You can be in a heated argument of some sort. The phone call from your mother comes and you change. Oh, hi, mommy. How are you doing? You're not your emotions. You're not your body. You can teach your body. You can tell your body to do things. You can watch your hand and say, I will grab this or do that. You can prove you're not your body. You're not your mind, your emotions, your body, your thoughts. Your thoughts, you can change. You can observe them. You're the observer. You can observe like the thoughts of your mind. So what are you? You're this entity, this consciousness, this soul, this being that is having a human experience. These struggles of like aversion and attraction are things you can also observe. So these are observable qualities. Why are we observing this? What is this? Is this a karmic debt? Is this thing that we're supposed to learn? Now comes the questions that are personal, that don't have an answer that we can say this is for you, unless we know what your mission is. And that's kind of my thoughts on the last slide.
Well done, Porter. Thank you very, very much. Very powerful summary. Really appreciate it. Anyone else? Any sentence?
So I
thought? Yes,
hi.
please.
I have a
Hi,
question.
good to see you.
So hi. I read somewhere that all suffering is self-inflicted, because suffering, whether it's bodily suffering or mental suffering or anything, starts with our mind and then manifests, through physical pain or through whatever else there is to manifest. So what do you have to say about that? Why would we cause self-infliction of suffering on ourselves?
Well, I'll just defer to Patanjali and to the Bhagavad Gita, where both of those and many other wisdom scriptures say it's due to avidya. Avidya is an energy that covers our real knowledge, and because we're in contact with it, we don't see things as they are. What's required is called anavritti shabdat, or uncovering ourselves, taking away the ignorance, dissipating it. Because once we do, we see there's actually nothing wrong. I'm okay. Clarity is our friend, and avidya, or ignorance, is what causes this. So avidya has been there since what's called since time immemorial. And coming out of it, we realize there's never been anything wrong. It's only my misidentification. So this is given in various scriptures, like the Srimad Bhagavatam says that my fear, my suffering, everything arises from a sense of looking in the wrong direction and being covered by this dense covering called avidya, or ignorance.
Somebody mentioned that.
Please, yes.
You get a wound, you get a cut or a broken bone or something that causes you suffering and pain. This is physical suffering and pain. It may be karmic, it may be something else. I'm not going to judge. But the point being is that this happens, right? Now, the emotional suffrage, the personal suffrage of this aversion and attraction that occurs, this is something that's within the control. Other things happen as they happen, but this perception is everything. How you perceive that. A lot of the studies done with psilocybin and psychedelics and stuff in the past have shown that folks that experience these heightened states of awareness and understanding of the being of now and the present moment change their perception to the point where they are able to be joyful in areas in which everyone would look at their experience and what they're going through and go, how can you be happy? And this is the change we must have in ourselves.
Yeah, thank you, Porter. We talked in previous sessions about how pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Of course, that's theoretical, saying that. When it's actually happening to you, how do you process it? And that's another point. It requires some diligence and practice and actual realization to know that. However, the cause of suffering is this covering called avidya, or ignorance, and it can be lifted. So the prescription is there. The diagnosis is also there too. You want to extend your question a little more, or is that helpful?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Yeah, that is helpful to me.
Okay. We have a few more
Thank you.
slides. Let me get to some of the relief also. And going past this second vritti, we get into the cycle. You'll notice at the top, invalid perception caused by avidya and the other elements I just mentioned. We get into this loop of karma, or the echo chamber in which the reactions. And Patanjali said this results in three aspects of our life, what's called jati, ayu, and bhog. So jati means birth. Where we take birth and what kind of body we take birth in is determined by our previous samskara, or by the accumulation of our samskars. And then we also get, along with that, ayu, which means, you've heard of Ayurveda. Ayurveda means to extend your life, knowledge of how to extend your life. Ayu means a particular lifespan. That's also arranged because of the momentum of my karma. And then finally, a bhog, a certain allotment of happiness and distress, material happiness and distress that comes to me as a result of my previous activities. Otherwise, we call it destiny. Why certain things happen to some people and not to others? Why did it happen to me? It's destined because of my engagement with my mind in the world. And then the next slide gives us, hopefully, some relief. Everyone can just sigh a sigh of relief. And here we are. The vrittis are stilled by practice and dispassion, the statement of Patanjali. So the mind can flow two ways, towards upliftment or towards sense objects. And if we practice dispassion and discrimination, we develop that, then it leads to the realization of the self. And here are some of the elements of practice that Patanjali gives and the Bhagavad Gita also recommends. It's called yajna. Yajna means to invest your energy, your attention, time in self-realization, in uplifting your consciousness. And there are three main ways that are mentioned. There are others as well, but these are very primary and they're within reach of anybody. One is mantra. So meditation breaks the cycle of the mind. And mantra meditation is extremely efficacious because of the way that you're getting help from an outside energy that's coming down to you and giving you the wherewithal to rise above the mind and break the cycle that we talked about, the various impressions and the way that they get into a loop. It can be broken through meditation. So Patanjali specifically recommends in his sutras and in the Bhagavad Gita is recommended and elsewhere about meditation, using a mantra, repeating sacred sound that purifies the consciousness, and it also helps to uplift one to a higher level of perception. Next is selfless service. Karma means that I'm in an attitude of a reward-seeking activity. Whatever I'm doing, I'm trying to get something for it. But when we can start to practice selfless service, in other words, doing things for the sake of serving rather than I want something in return. And sometimes even anonymous service will be very helpful in that way, because I'm not, well, hey, I'm doing the most selfless service of anybody. Then the ego starts to come in. But actual selfless service, doing service for service instead of trying to get some reward. And finally, a transcendental diet. I say transcendental because there's a way in which what we eat affects our consciousness. So trending towards, first of all, Patanjali said nonviolence in eating as much as possible, and also sanctifying whatever you eat, purifying it. You can do that through intentionality and mantra. And so these are three very much within the reach of everybody's lifestyle that you can integrate into your life. And mantra is something that's a very sublime. You can do it especially in the morning with great effect. So if you start your day with some mantra, means take time after you get up to drink a little water, purify yourself in whatever way you can. And then if you sit down and do some mantra and repeat it and listen to it and spend time introspecting, like as we were doing at the beginning, along with the mantra, you'll get the fruit of feeling a heightened level of perception of yourself and the world. And you'll also feel what's called vairagya. You'll feel a little, a space between those attractions and repulsions of the world. Like the kind of things that really bug you, they won't bug you as much. Or the kind of things that demand your attention, your senses, is you have to eat this, you have to eat more. You'll start to develop a modicum of, oh, I don't have to, I'm not forced to. In fact, some of these poets from ancient times wrote some very interesting points about how the senses are like highway robbers. You're driving down the road, minding your own business, and they jump out. Okay, give us all your money, do this, do that. And so the senses were going along in a smooth way, and then they come out and say, no, go the other way, and by the way, give me all your time. And then you might end up, as an example, scrolling or watching something you didn't want to watch or eating something you didn't want to eat or didn't need to eat. Why can't you be self-directing? Well, it's because of the influence of these vrittis. And these can be weakened and then overcome and replaced by positive vrittis and samskaras by the process of mantra, and then selfless service and amending diet through a transcendental diet. And now let's just see if there's any reflections or questions at the end. And then in the last couple minutes, we'll do some mantra together, just as a way to leave on a high note. Yes,
I have a reflection, actually. It's a very beautiful talk today. Thank you very much. So at the beginning, I think you said that failure can be the pillar to success. And it's a very magnificent statement, because after that, we talked about all the latent impressions and all this baggage we carry all the time. And then we actually building on that every moment as well, right? So you've got all the impressions, and now our mind is still flowing, the chitta's everywhere. So you're building on that. And so understanding that we are fallible and that these are sometimes not the right things for us, and understanding those failures or suffering or whatever you want to call it are just opportunities to learn and lead us to success, and base that as a pillar of our life. It's very embracing, it's very great. So that was wonderful. And then you also mentioned that one molecule, we can start that change. So that one molecule is this very simple practice we did at the beginning, which gives the mind space and clarity to just be and to see. And you use the word vivek or discernment as a way to see through what is covering those those layers and perhaps causing us suffering, that gives us a relief to move forward. So that was really wonderful. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for being so articulate and bringing important points back to us. Thank you very, very much, as usual. Okay. Well, because we're coming near the end, does anybody else want to comment before we try a little mantra meditation for those who want to stay one more minute?
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Please,
Hey.
please accept my most humble obeisances.
Good to see you.
I just had a reflection today that was very profound for me. Being such a sinful person that I am and ignorant, when you said that that we don't perceive the world how it is, but we perceive the world by how we are, that was really profound for me, because I see my mind always constantly trying to learn things that it already knows. It tries to know things that it already knows to make myself feel comfortable. And when you said this, it made me realize why I always research things that I already know. And so it made me challenge myself to read more of Srila Prabhupada books and try to learn things from a different perspective than what I'm used to. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for the lecture today.
Sure. Well, obviously, I mean, there's a statement attributed to Einstein. I have never actually searched out to see if he said it or not, but the present state of mind that we're in can't be aided or lifted by the same mindset that created it, and therefore we need someone that comes from a higher level that helps us. This is the whole idea of, in any discipline, of having a teacher. Athletes have them, musicians have teachers, spiritual practice, there's teachers, and those who can mentor and help us to rise above. It takes a lot of guidance to make progress in anything. And I really liked what Sadhana said too, that we should have a little bit of compassion for our own selves. Don't be too hard on yourself. Don't be too easy either. Find a balance, because if you become lackadaisical and say whatever, then that's what you get. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. It doesn't matter. Alice in Wonderland.
So something you said with to reflect on Jose, another ignorant soul to another. What I understand from my studies of numerous religions, something comes in Judaism of a rabbi who reads the Torah 100 times cannot be compared to a rabbi who reads the Torah 101 times. The knowledge and the experience, you must continue to refresh this knowledge in your mind to make it permanent and make it relevant to your life consistently. It is not bad to look at, oh, I'm reading the same thing or the same knowledge again, but I read it as a 20-year-old. I read it as a 30-year-old. I read it. We are not comprehending anymore as an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old. We're comprehending it with all our life experiences, all the things that are coming around us, and so it becomes more relevant. The wisdom that we had from the same scripture of whatever history that we read at 10 cannot equate to 20 or 30 or 40 years old. We get different revelations. More, I've seen scriptures teach me exactly what I needed at the time. I read the same thing 10 years later, teach me something different. It's miraculous, right? So we must not think that, oh, we learned that, we're done. No, that's a very scientific way of thinking.
Good points. It's ever fresh. And the experience is always increasing and ever getting deeper. There's no satiation in a practice of investigating the self and what's beyond in the fourth dimension. Speaking of which, let's take a little bit of time just for a moment to repeat our mantra. Mantra, man means mind and tra means to deliver. It comes from the root word trayate. And the conditions of the mind I mentioned earlier, the vrittis, the churnings, go on in the mind by default. However, mantra is a deliberate way of amending the algorithms of the mind, bringing in an energy that comes from a higher level, from the higher dimension, A mantra really is an avatar. Avatar, of course, is used in many different ways these days, but it literally means one who descends from a higher level to a lower level. And the mantra itself is an avatar. So you can think of it like that as you're performing. It comes directly into your conscious awareness, and it helps you to rise above the vrittis, or the churnings of the mind. The first mantra that's been passed down to me through many generations of teachers, I've spelled phonetically here, but this opens the heart to compassion and gratitude. And this avatar, Nitai and Gauranga, are compassionate, and they also help us to overcome all obstacles, any incompetencies and so forth that may be there. They help to remove. So just by saying this mantra, I recommend saying this first before we go into the second mantra, which is called the Maha Mantra. But let's try this one together behind closed mics. And you can just feel what it feels, see what it feels like. See what it feels like. You can feel the power of the mantra just by listening to it and being aware of it. So I'll say the mantra 5 times, and we'll do it together, and then we'll move to the next mantra. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Out of the next mantra, we have the Hare. This mantra is a mantra of beauty and ananda, or happiness. So the word Krishna refers to our existence. We eternally exist, and we come from a conscious source. And Na refers to ananda, or joy. It's inherently joyful, and Krish, unlimitedly beautiful and attractive. And Hare means the nurturing feminine energy of our original source that is helping us in every single way. So Rama also means strength. The kind of strength that we get to have a practice in the first place comes from a source. It descends to us, and that comes from Rama. So the mantra altogether goes Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And I'll repeat this mantra 5 times, and behind closed mics, you can follow along with me if you like. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If anyone has any questions about mantra, about selfless service, about diet and so forth, you can write me through my website. There's a section, Ask Vaish. It comes directly to me, and then I can answer you and give more details if you like about the practice. If you have any comments, reflections, you can follow up there. And we'll be back here next week to continue the series. And also, we have a program that you can access through my website, vaisheshikadas.com, called Spiritual Fitness. And there's some parameters there that you can follow for body, mind, and spirit, and join together with others who are doing it. JM will just show you briefly. This is the website. And within the website, you'll find the Spiritual Fitness Challenge.
Yeah, so if you visit the website vaisheshikadas.com, then if you scroll down, you'll see the 21-day Spiritual Fitness Challenge. Currently, for the month of August, the challenge is continuing. You can click on Learn More to visit the actual page, which gives an overview of what the challenge itself is. It gives an overview. Also, for each of the facets, as Vaish mentioned, body, mind, and spirit, all the activities that you can perform are listed. You can go through them in detail. If you have any question, you can ask. And finally, there is a tracker, so you can submit. You can participate by submitting progress online. So you can just click on it. It will bring a tracker. You can select check boxes. And so as you could see, you can enter your name, email address, and then for each of the activity, if you're performing for a given day, you can tick them that I've completed it. And then you can click on submit. Once you submit, you'll receive an email with your response, as well as a link saying if you want to edit the response, you can go back to the email and edit the response. This way, on a daily basis, you can keep submitting your progress. And as and when you submit your progress, you can see that depending on your selection, the progress is shown on the tracker. So right now we have our own Josh leading the pack. He with the highest score. He does a very nice gratitude journal also, which you can view. Glenn and Helena, Chuck, Haley, they all are participating, so you can go through them. And yeah, please do join in. It's very nourishing, and it will definitely help you make a difference in your life. Anything else you wanted to add as well, Vaish?
It's very helpful to have that kind of a template to work from. Everybody needs some kind of support system, and that's one aspect that can really help. And you'll notice a difference right away. Don't think you have to do it all. Even if you do a small part of it and just have it around, that you'll notice that it helps. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining and for your kind attention. I've felt it, and I'm edified by your presence and by your questions and the discussion. And I'll look forward to seeing you next time. In the meantime, please keep the transcendental vibration going. The sounds that we hear determine the quality of our life, the quality of our mantras, the quality of the sound vibration determines the quality of our life. And remember, where your attention goes, energy flows. That's our main asset we have in life, where we place our attention. It's our only asset, actually. That's our volition, where we get to concentrate. So choose wisely, and you'll notice that the result gets sweeter and sweeter. And that's the essence of spiritual practice. And I'll look forward to seeing you all next time. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take good care.
Thank you.
Thank you.